Hello, I am Brian Lewis. I'm an instructor with JTNS, and today we're going to talk about job planning and work zone setup. However, before we get started, what I would like to do is give you an opportunity to discuss any near misses or hopefully no accidents, but if you've had some accidents, to discuss those before we get started. So go ahead and pause the video and discuss any kind of near misses or accidents you might have had. Make sure you discuss solutions to make sure they don't happen again, and then go ahead and press play and we will continue with the presentation. Okay, hopefully you all have had a good discussion and we'll get started talking about job planning and work zone setup. So, when we talk about job planning and work zone setup, it's really important that we do a good planning session. Have good communication, because you're going to be exposed to traffic, and being exposed to traffic is a difficult thing to deal with because you don't completely control all the risk. So keep that in mind. It's one of the things that we have to deal with. So we're going to talk a little bit in an overview about what we are dealing with. So remember, the work zone protects pedestrians, motorists, and workers. A lot of times we forget that pedestrians are part of the people we protect. We interact with a lot of motorists, good interactions and bad interactions, so motorists are pretty straightforward and in the forefront of our minds when we set up temporary traffic control zones. So sometimes we forget about pedestrians, bicyclists, things like that. Of course, we want to protect ourselves and our co-workers. So keep that in mind. We protect everybody. When we establish that temporary traffic control zone, the utility takes responsibility because it has disrupted the normal flow of traffic. That's important to remember. Signs, cones, and devices are used to communicate what is going on to road users. This is important to remember. There is a reason that our shirts, our vest, our signs, our cones all have really bright colors. The yellow-green fluorescent color, the orange-red bright color, the reflective materials that are used. These are colors that are not readily observable in nature, and because of that makes these signs, cones, and devices and us utility workers stand out, and we want to stand out. Nature is made up primarily of various greens, browns, and black colors. We want to stand out from those things, so it's important to realize why these things are the colors they are and how they help us stay safe. Setting up, taking down signs, cones, and devices is the most dangerous time you can be on the road. It's the most dangerous time you can be on the road for a variety of reasons. So, when you're setting up and taking down, your attention is divided from watching out from road users, people who are operating vehicles, and the task of setting your signs up, making sure that they're visible, setting your devices up, making sure the high intensity lights are working correctly, setting your cones up, making sure the flagger taper is correct, making sure you have a large enough buffer zone, making sure the work zone and the activity area is large enough so that the people who are doing the physical labor there have enough room to operate. Making sure that the termination area has the proper amount of cones in it, just like the flagger taper, which is a minimum of 5 cones for every 50 to 100 feet. So keep that in mind. So while you're doing these activities, what's going on is you're paying attention to what you're doing, and it's hard to keep one eye doing that correctly and one eye on people who are operating motor vehicles. That makes it really dangerous. We're going to talk about the layout of our temporary traffic control zone. I want to encourage you at this point in the pre-planning phase to use your job briefing as an opportunity not only to discuss what you're going to do, but in addition to that, make sure that if you have the opportunity to make a drawing. Draw a diagram of what you're going to do and how you're going to set up your temporary traffic control zone. Remember, advanced warning area is where your signs are posted to warn motorists about what to expect. Utility work ahead. Workers present. These things communicate to the vehicle operator about what to expect. We do not want them surprised. When they are surprised, they do not always make the best decisions. We want to give them time to make good decisions to operate their vehicle safely. And because of that, we want to make sure we take down, turn down, cover with plastic, turn away signs from the road when you leave the zone. If we're using these signs to give motorists advance warning, we don't want to lie to them. We want them to trust our signs. We want them to trust the flaggers. If for some reason they decide to ignore the signs and ignore the flaggers, they put people at risk. One way we can help ourselves is to make sure that when we leave the work zone, we take care of any advance warning signs we've posted so that they're not readily available when no one's there. Take into account blind curves, blind hills, shrubs, bushes, and trees. Once again, this is really important. It's really important that we realize that we want to make ourselves visible. That's the reason you put on the vest with the high intensity colors. It's the reason we use stop slow paddles. We want to be visible. When you put that vest on, you are in effect becoming a device. You're communicating that you're someone that doesn't want to be run over. Okay? So make sure you take into account these natural hindrances to seeing what's going on. All right? So keep that in mind and make sure you put that in your drawing. Use your job briefings once again to draw a simple diagram. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a draftsman. You don't have to be anything but someone who can use a pencil, pen, and a piece of paper to draw stick figures and lines to represent the advance warning area, the flagger taper, the buffer zone, the work zone or the activity area where work's going to get completed, and the termination area where normal traffic patterns start. Okay? There again, this does not have to be a work of art. It just takes a minute or two. All of us use language sometimes that is vague, and this is the enemy to communication. One way to overcome vague words or our vague communication is to use a diagram. This is a very it's a great technique is what it is, and it's part of active talking. It's part of active talking to be able to describe to people what's important to stay safe. So keep that in mind. Very simple diagram is going to work wonders. Is going to absolutely work wonders for your communication. Make it a point to periodically check signs, cones, and devices that you've deployed. Now, I realize in utility work, most of the time, whatever we need to get done is going to get done in a couple or 3 hours. However, there's still potential from time to time that you're going to be there for a day, maybe 2 days. And during that time, make it a point to go back, check your signs, make sure they're where they're supposed to be, that a wind or the cars or something hasn't turned them around, knocked them down. Make sure your devices are working as they're intended. Make sure your cones are in the right places and they haven't accidentally been moved or intentionally moved in some cases, right? So as we're talking about setup and takedown, make sure that your equipment is clean and in adequate condition. As I've already mentioned, those strong yellow-green fluorescent colors, those strong orange-red colors, the reflective material, those high-intensity lights on vehicles and on signs and our other devices, they are there because they are not readily observed in nature. You readily observe various greens and various browns and various black colors all throughout nature. If our equipment is not clean, if our vest and our shirts are not clean, we, in effect, start camouflaging ourselves and mixing into the world around us, and we don't want that. We want people operating a vehicle to see us when we are near the road or on the road. That way, they won't run over us. That's an important thing. So make sure all that stuff's clean, make sure it's adequate, make sure it's in good shape. Now, I will say this, as we've talked about active shooter situations before, those very clothes that we wear that help protect us and keep people from running over us make us great targets in situations where someone has a gun and their only purpose is to shoot, maim, and kill people in an indiscriminate fashion. Right? Indiscriminate fashion, just there to see how much chaos and hurt they can cause in the world. You're ever in a situation like that, get that high intensity color off your body as quick as you can. That's going to be part of your run, hide, fight. It's going to be part of your run, hide, fight. Get away and hide. It's hard to hide when you look like a big, bright yellow, green, or orange target. So keep that in mind. We also want to set up our signs, devices, and cones in the order that road users are going to encounter them. We want to do that because when we set up in the advanced warning area and we put those signs up, that's the first thing a road user is going to see. And once we get those up and we move on to our devices and our cones, we at least have the protection of having advanced warning set up while we're putting our devices and cones in place. If you do it in the reverse order, what you're doing is putting yourself at greater risk. What we're doing is making sure we maximize the reduction of the risk to traffic. We want to maximize that, and by setting out our advanced warning signs, devices, and then the cones, we are at least getting the benefit of the advanced warning signs first, devices second, and then lastly the cones, where we tell people what direction to go in. Do not ever turn your back to traffic. Now, I know when you're setting up your signs, you're setting up your cones and devices and all these things that we have to do, it's very difficult to pay attention to the job we're supposed to do and keep an eye on traffic. But you do not want to turn your back to traffic. As soon as you turn your back to traffic, as soon as you start paying no attention to what's going on, you're putting yourself at risk of being run over. So we don't want to do that. We want to pay attention to what's going on as far as the motor vehicles in our area, right? So once the work zone is set up, drive through it to make sure it's right. Make sure that it is clear what a motorist is supposed to do and that it does make sense, okay? Make sure it is clear what a motorist is supposed to do and ask yourself, does it make sense? You have to remember when you're doing this, you have had more training than the average motorist. You know exactly why those advanced warning signs are there. You know exactly why the high intensity lights are there. You know exactly why you wear the colors you wear. You know why the cones are set up so that there's a minimum of 5 cones in the flagging area and a minimum of 5 cones for every 50 to 100 feet in the termination area. You know why there's a buffer there. The average motorist does not understand that. The average motorist is not going to understand that you have to take into account blind curves, blind hills, unkept shrubs, trees, bushes, and that sort of thing. So for you to drive through it, you have to think like the average motorist. It's important that you do that. It's important that you do it in the right frame of mind so that when a motorist drives through it, an average motorist, that they will understand what it's supposed to do. Dismantle your work zone as soon as the work is completed. There again, this goes into the same frame of mind we talked about when we talked about turning our advance warning signs down, away, or putting plastic over them so that people will not learn to ignore our advance warning signs. As soon as you're finished work, it's really important to go ahead, take those cones, devices, and signs down, and make sure that they don't stay up when people can look at them and say, hey, there's no work going on here, and learn to ignore our signs, devices, and cones. Once again, really important. It's also important that you dismantle in the reverse order that it was put up. So when we talked about putting or setting up your temporary traffic control zone, we talked about setting your signs up first, getting the benefit of having the advance warning signs up while you put in place your devices and cones. It reduces the risk of being exposed to traffic. And for that reason, we wanted to dismantle it in the reverse order. So you take your cones up first, then your devices, then your signs. When you do it in this order, you at least have the protection of the advance warning signs being available to road users. So it's better than taking it down first and road users not knowing what to expect. So when you set up, you put down your signs in the advance warning area first, any devices that you're going to use, and then your cones. When you take down your temporary traffic control zone, the first thing you take up is your cones. The second thing is your devices, and the last thing are the signs in the advance warning area. I appreciate you all paying attention. If you have any questions, any comments, please get in contact with your JTNS instructor. Ask them any question that you need to ask. If we know the answer, we'll give you the answer right away. If for some reason you've asked a really great question and we don't know the answer right off the top of our head, what we'll do is research and get that information back to you. It's really important that we do that. It's really important that you have your questions answered. Once again, I appreciate you paying attention. Please take temporary traffic control zones seriously. Please take your pre-planning seriously. Please make use of simple diagrams to make sure that you communicate clearly to people where you want the advance warning area set up, where the flagger needs to be stationed, how large of a buffer you need before you get to the work zone or the activity area, and then where your termination area is going to be so that motorists and pedestrians and bicyclists and motorcyclists and everybody can return to the normal flow of traffic. It's really important that we take this serious and we do just a little pre-planning, just a little pre-planning, if I can get it out of my mouth, and make sure we all stay safe. Have a great day, have a great month, and see you later. Thank you.